Welcome back to All About Winning Daily Fantasy Sports. My name is Ty Patton. Week 7 is upon us, and it's time to put all the research to use and build some winning lineups. In this video, I will recap the player pool that I have created from my previous videos this past week. We will build some manual lineups. I'll show you the results of my optimizer, and we'll recap the players that we have in the player pool, and we also will take a game by game look at the players that I feel are fantasy relevant in each game. First, let's recap the player pool that we've created in the previous videos. Quarterbacks that I'm targeting this week: Goff, Ryan, Josh Allen, Wilson from Seattle, Murray from Arizona, and Brissett from the Colts. Following is the running backs that I'm targeting: Fournette, Cook, Saquon Barkley, he's back this week, David Johnson. I've removed Kamara, remove him from any lineups that you may be building. He's ruled out this week. Josh Jacobs from Oakland, Henry from Tennessee, Freeman from Atlanta, and I've added Singletary and Gore from Buffalo. I don't really like running back committees. My preference in that game is Gore. I feel like he's going to get his share of carries. He's been getting between 11 and 19 carries, whether Singletary was there or not, and they've been using him on the goal line. And I've also added Murray in place of Kamara. I'm not personally real big on Murray, but he could provide some value at his salary. Wide receivers: Cooper Kupp, Michael Thomas, Hopkins from Houston, Hilton from Indianapolis, Fitzgerald from Arizona, Tyler Boyd, Cincinnati, Julio Jones from Atlanta, Brandon Cooks and Robert Woods from the Rams, Alden Tate from Cincinnati, Brown from Buffalo. Brown, just a reminder, Brown from Baltimore has been ruled out. Or he's doubtful. I'm sorry, not ruled out yet. Sanu and Ridley from Atlanta. And I've added Lockett from Seattle because with my quarterbacks, I always want to have at least one target. So I've added Lockett. I've added Beasley to go with Josh Allen and John Brown. And I've also added Kenny Stills. He doesn't have an injury designation. He could be real sneaky in that game against Indianapolis, with a lot of focus going to Hopkins and Fuller. I wanted to mention that I don't cover the flex position individually because I always use the players from my player pool to fill in that flex position. Me personally, my preference is to use a running back in that position. I like to have 3 running backs, and I like to project at least 65 targets between the 3. That's what I'm shooting for. I feel like I already have 3 wide receivers, and getting that combination right every week is a task in itself, and I don't want to add a 4th one to that. I will have some lineups with the wide receiver in the flex position. They do add some added value because of Draftkings PPR. But in most situations, I'm shooting for closer to 70% of my lineups of having a running back in the flex position. I do like to use an optimizer. What I do is I plug in only the players that I just read off to you. And before I do that, I read off the wide receivers. I'm sorry. I didn't mention the tight ends and defensive special teams. Tight ends are Hooper, Ingram, Andrews, Graham, Hawkinson, Waller, and Henry. And the 3 defensive special teams that I'm interested in this week are the Giants, the Bills, and the Bears. Sorry, now we can go to the optimizer. What I like the optimizer for is I take all the players from my player pool and I put it in there because I'm not going to see every possible random lineup. I don't MME Don't have nothing against anyone who can. And if I could, I would. I've had 2 weeks out of the first 6 where my player pool generated a lineup that would beat the winning lineup from the Millie Maker week 2 and again last week. So I've 33% of the time I've had the player pool needed to have really high scoring lineup. What I do when I put these players in the optimizer, I set it for 150 lineups. I set max exposures to 20% for most of the players. That way I don't get all the lower priced players and basically a bunch of studs and duds. I don't want that. I want balanced lineups. But I don't want the same players in over half of them. There's a few this week, for instance, like Fournette and Cup, where I set their exposures higher because I'm really high on those players this week, and I actually set them at 60%. I set it to each lineup to have at least 3 unique players, which means every lineup will have at least 3 players that are different from all the other lineups. I make a rule that the quarterback has to have at least 1 target, be it a wide receiver or a tight end. And I also don't like to have I don't personally like to have a running back with a quarterback in the same lineup. Sometimes in cash lineups, I'll do that if I'm going to run a quarterback naked, meaning no receivers. But in GPP, I definitely don't like to have my running backs with my quarterbacks. It's just my preference. Um, the 3 defensive special teams that I pick out each week, I try to keep it to a lower number. I like to have a spend up option, a middle range option, and a spin down option. I don't punt any positions. This week in particular, the 3 that I had, I set their exposures at 30%. And the other 10%, I checked off the 49ers, Packers, Vikings, Chargers, Rams, and Colts for the other 10%. Last week, my optimizer, when I set it for 150, it was able to generate 108 different lineups using my player pool. This week, I set it for 150, and it was able to generate 142. And I think that's because I had a few more wide receivers to choose from this week. So, if the winning Millie Maker lineup or the optimal lineup this week has all the players from my player pool, somewhere it got generated, and that lineup got generated in the 142 lineups that I did with the optimizer. So, I mean, we'll be able to, when we do the recap, I'll be able to tell you what it had. And you'll know from our player pool whether or not those players were in the optimal or in the higher scoring lineups. So, without further ado, this was the first lineup generated by the optimizer using just the players from all the videos that I did this week. And I'm just showing you an example. You may want to put your own spin on it, but this was the very first lineup of the 142. First, at quarterback, it had Josh Allen. We'll mention the ownership for each one of these too from the site that I use. Josh has got a 13% ownership, which isn't really that bad. Running back, Fournette. He does have a fairly high ownership this week, and oftentimes I'm willing to eat the chalk. I just feel like Fournette has a phenomenal matchup this week. Running back, second running back was Henry. Wide receiver was Brown from Buffalo, 500. So you can see where the optimizer used my rule of having at least 1 target matched up with the quarterback. Next wide receiver was T.Y. Hilton. Really like Ty in this game. I don't put too much emphasis on past games. He has had some really good games against Houston, um, but I just like the matchup with Hilton this week at home. And the last wide receiver was Cooper Kupp. Kupp and Fournette are two of my favorite plays this week. I really like the volume. I think the matchup is phenomenal for Kupp against Atlanta, and he's the highest targeted wide receiver on the slate this week. So I really think he's going to put up some points in that game, and it's the highest total game on the board. Tight end Waller from Oakland, getting a lot of targets. Tyrell Williams for Oakland could possibly be out this week, which those targets are going to have to go somewhere too. And Waller already gets a large share, so he could be in for a big week, especially if Green Bay is able to put some points up. Flex position was Alden Tate from Cincinnati. I believe he's 4,500. If Jacksonville, remember Ramsey's not with Jacksonville anymore, so if Jacksonville decides they're going to try to take away Boyd, this could open up a lot of targets for Alden Tate, and he's been targeted more than Boyd down in the red zone, and he's actually took away the effectiveness of Tyler Eifert as well. Eifert was getting targeted early on in the red zone, and seems like Dalton is looking more to. He's had 7 red zone targets so far. In defensive special teams was the Giants at 2,500, and Optimizer left $200 on the table. And again, I really like the Giants this week. Not because I think the Giants are going to shut out Arizona, but I think with the possibility of a lot of plays, a lot of passing plays, a lot of scoring, rookie on the road, I feel like the Giants might be able to make him make some erratic decisions. So I like the possibility, and they're right now they're not even have a 1% ownership. So I really like that. So that's the optimizer lineup. Now I'm going to show you the build that I'm working on. And again, I'm just showing you this. I don't expect you to take these, or I hope you wouldn't take these and copy them. If you do, you're going to see them again. You can look for the Cowboy up here, the Cowboy Fan 215. That's me. And if we're going to win with this lineup, then you're going to be splitting it. So put your own spin on it. Use the players from our player pool. I'm just providing you the research, and I hope you get a lot of value from the research. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But this is the build that I'm currently working on. I like Jared Goff. A lot of people are scared of him, which makes me like him even more this week because of recency bias. People are probably going to be off of him. He's got he's got the best matchup on the board this week in Atlanta. Atlanta is just getting shredded through the air. Running back, I already mentioned this a couple times, Leonard Fournette. If he's not my favorite play, he's one of my top 3 favorite plays this week. Phenomenal matchup in Cincinnati, and I think he'll definitely get there in value at his 7,000. He's getting large, all the things that I look for in a running back. He's getting the touches, he's getting the red zone carries, he's on the field over 90% of the time. So I really like Leonard Fournette. Next, this one's kind of sneaky, but I'm trying to get as much exposure to that high total game. And didn't hear much talk about the running backs this week. If the Rams are able to put pressure on Ryan, could see a situation where he dumps the ball off a lot to Freeman and Hooper. So I'm just trying to get some players and get exposure to that game. I feel like there's going to be a lot of points in it, and I really like this matchup for Freeman. Wide receiver Fitzgerald. This is a phenomenal matchup for Larry Fitzgerald against the Giants. They are the third highest total game on the board. He is getting a lot of the red zone targets. He's getting a lot of targets. Period. He's averaging just over 9 targets per game, I believe it is. And he's $6,100, so he less than significantly less than Julio's at 8,000. So really like his matchup at $6,100, and I think he'll get value pretty easy. My next wide receiver is T.Y. Hilton, 5,900. I think this is another good value at home. Houston's given up a lot of targets and fantasy points to the wide receiver position. I think T.Y. Hilton's in a really good position this week. Next, spend up at wide receiver, Cooper Kupp. I stacking him with Jared Goff, so he's part of my team stack. He's part of my game stack. I feel like he's going to get a lot of targets in this game. Goff is going to him. They're indoors. The highest total on the board. He's leading the league. He's leading the main slate as far as targets, averaging over 20 fantasy points per game. Definitely want him, and I want to have a lot of exposure to Cooper Kupp. Tight end is Henry. Now, one of my bills, I'm trying to figure out who am I going to sacrifice to get Hooper in there. But I feel like Henry provides some value. He's lower owned. Did have a really good week last week against Pittsburgh. It was garbage time, but he still had a lot of targets. He had 2 touchdowns. And Tennessee's given up. They're giving up the 5th most points to the tight end position. My flex position, going right back to another target for Goff. If Goff is going to have a good game, I feel like a couple of his receivers are going to, well, at least one receiver is going to have a good game. But if he has a really good game, like 300 yards to get that bonus, he's probably going to have 2 targets. And I like Brandon Cooks. I like Cooks over the top and Cooper Kupp underneath. I feel like it's just a really good matchup in that game. So that gives me 4 players right there. Goff, Kupp, and Cooks, bringing it back with Freeman's 4 players from the highest total game on the board. My defensive special team, mentioned them already. I like the Giants because of the way this sets up. No way do I think they'll shut them out, but I feel like they can force Murray into some mistakes, and that's what I'm looking for in my defenses is players that can defenses that can cause mistakes or targeting players that rookie quarterbacks on the road. I like the Giants. I feel like they're going to be one of the top scoring defenses this week. And at 2,500, it doesn't take much for that to get value. So there's the lineup that I'm working on. Might try to tweak it a little bit to get Hooper in there, which would give me 5 players, a 5-player game stack. But I am comfortable with a 4-player, 3 players coming back with 1 player from Atlanta. So some things to remember that I've talked about. Quarterbacks. I like to focus on the quarterbacks that are in the higher scoring games, quarterbacks that are indoors, individual matchups. If the wide receivers have a good matchup, then those quarterbacks for those wide receivers are probably in a good position too. Running backs. I'm looking for touches, snap percentage. I try to avoid the running back committees. I want as many touches as possible. Touches meaning carries and targets combined. Shooting, if I'm using 3 running backs in the with 1 in the flex position, then I'm going to try to I want 65 or more touches out of those running backs combined. Wide receivers, I'm looking at targets. I want to focus on the receivers that are getting targeted in the red zone. Value. I want to stack one wide receiver with my quarterback if I'm the larger GPPs. Pay attention to ownership. Try to differentiate yourself to gain leverage. Consider the game script. What could go wrong? You know, try to factor those things in. You can't project or predict injuries, but think of a game script. How do you think the game's going to play out, and go with those players? Because if you get the game scripts right, you're probably going to have the players in the right places. Tight ends, again, targets, red zone, and value. Defensive special teams, target against the teams who could be playing from behind and may need to throw a lot of passes, or teams that do throw a lot of passes. There's a lot that has to be done right for a pass to be completed, and lots of things can go wrong, and it sets up sacks, interceptions, fumbles, strip sacks, touchdowns. Those are the defense special teams plays that you can get a lot of defensive points. Now let's look at each game real quick, and I'm going to point out the players that I feel are fantasy relevant in each game. Most of them are we've already talked about in our player pool, but I just want to summarize it for you. Rams at Atlanta. Rams are a 3-point favorite, has the highest total on the board. Both quarterbacks, Goff and Ryan, are in play. I believe they're $100 difference. I feel like both of them can get to 300 yards. It's just a matter of who you like best. Goff, truthfully, has the best matchup. The Rams do have Jalen Ramsey on their team now. Whether he is accustomed to their defense or not, cornerback shuts down a wide receiver. That's what they try to do. So from Jacksonville to the Rams, he didn't forget how to play cornerback, and he's probably going to be lined up on Julio all day. Julio's a beast. I still think he'll get his, but Ryan and their game plan, they do understand that Jalen Ramsey's on that team now. So maybe the targets are going to go to Sanu and Ridley and Hooper, and perhaps Freeman will get a lot more dump downs. Ryan's getting a lot of pressure from Aaron Donald. So all the wide receivers in this game are in play. Kupp, Woods, Cooks, Ridley, Sanu, Jones, and I really like Austin Hooper, the tight end from Atlanta. Baltimore at Seattle. Seattle's a 3.5-point favorite. Has the second highest total on the board at 49.5 points. Both quarterbacks are in play, Wilson and Lamar. Jackson, Lockett, the top target for Russell Wilson. Jackson's top target, Marquise Brown, is doubtful. So it could be a big day for his tight end Andrews, and Seattle's given up a lot of points to the tight end position. You also have to consider the running backs in this game. Ingram and Carson, Carson especially is getting a lot of touches, and I would definitely consider him in some of your lineups. Arizona and Giants. Giants are a 3-point favorite. This is the third highest total on the board at 49. Barkley and Ingram are back for the Giants. Have to consider Murray and Fitzgerald and David Johnson from Arizona. This game could be a shootout, and even though it could possibly have a lot of points, I still like the Giants D to be able to be in the position to get some sacks and perhaps turnovers against Murray. I really like Larry Fitzgerald in that game too. His matchup is really good. Barkley, it's going to be, for me, it's going to be hard to get up to Barkley at 8,900, but he could be contrarian at that price, and he could be a value. He can definitely crush a slate, get into the 30s and 40s. easily. He has that potential. I don't know how much they're going to put on him in this game, but they also have Ingram who's back, and Jones likes to go to the tight end a lot. Next, Houston at Indy. Indy's a 1-point favorite. Game total's 48. Brissett and Hilton, I feel like, are a nice little mini stack. Ebron and Doyle, the tight ends there, could be in play. For me, I'm going to temper my expectations for Watson. If I do use him in any lineups, obviously I'm going to have Hopkins, Fuller, or Stills. This week, I kind of like Hopkins. He hasn't had that real big breakout game yet. And I also like Stills coming back. I feel like he could be real sneaky in this game. I don't think there's going to be much of a running game in this game. But I definitely also like T.Y. Hilton a lot. Oakland at Green Bay. Green Bay's a 6-point favorite. Game total's 47. Josh Jacobs and Waller from Oakland are in play. Aaron Rodgers to, I don't know. Devontae Adams is out. Geronimo Allison hasn't been cleared from concussion protocol. Scantling has a questionable tag. This might be a really big week for Jimmy Graham at tight end. So he's one that you want to consider. I just don't know who Rodgers is going to throw to. If they're just going to try to lean on the running game, Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams, I don't know. But the players that I really like are Jacobs and Waller, and I have a lot of interest in Jimmy Graham as well. Minnesota, Detroit. Minnesota's a 1-point favorite on the road. The game total is 45. Player that I'm really interested in this game is Dalvin Cook. Minnesota. Feel like this could be a Cook game. The last couple games, Minnesota's been getting a lot done through the air to Thielen, and then last weekend to Diggs. This could be getting back to Dalvin Cook and a lot of check downs to him, as well as his rushing yards. And also consider, I don't really like the matchup for Kenny Galladay against Xavier Rhodes, but this could open up the door for Marvin Jones and definitely T.J. Hawkinson at tight end is in play. But other than Cook, I really don't have a lot of interest in this game. Jacksonville, Cincinnati. Jacksonville's a 3.5-point favorite with a 43.5-point game total. I love Leonard Fournette this week. As I mentioned, he's one of my, if not the top, one of my top three players. You could possibly bring it back with Boyd or Tate. Just Fournette at running back, and then Cincinnati playing catch up, that type of game script. And maybe to be contrarian, go to Tate instead of Boyd. I think that Jacksonville will focus on trying to shut down Boyd because that's basically all they have. And if they get behind, that pretty much, if they play ahead, Mixon will be in the game a lot. If they play from behind, Mixon carries get limited, and you start seeing a lot of Giovanni Bernard out of the backfield catching passes. So that's why I don't really have much interest in Mixon. San Fran at Washington. San Fran's a 10-point favorite. The game total is 41.5 points. Feel like San Fran's going to do what they've been doing, using the running back by committee. That's why I'm not really high, that high on George Kittle. I'm not sure how much they'll have to do offensively to get the job done. I mean, if they can control the game, shorten the game with the run game, and control the rest of the game with their defense, which is what they've been doing to win games, then there's, to me, the fantasy relevant players got a three-headed backfield, and Garoppolo's spreading the ball around. So I mean, Kittle was listed as the top Draftkings. I believe he's 6,700. He's the top tight end. And to get there, to get up there and build a lead, it's possible that Kittle goes for 7 for 100 and a touchdown. But I don't really think that that's going to be necessary, and I think they'll just be able to just control the whole game with the running game, and some dump offs to Coleman and their defense. And if they get a defensive touchdown uh, to turn the game around, I just don't see where the receiver in um, the game script of believing there's going to be some garbage time at the end of the game if the game gets out of hand. Could be possible, but I don't really like banking on that. Miami at Buffalo. Buffalo, the biggest favorite on the main slate at 17 points. They're at home. The game has a 40-point total. Josh Allen and his two main targets, John Brown and Cole Beasley, are in play. Um, I added Gore and Singletary to the running backs. I feel like Gore will be used more than Singletary, plus Gore will be facing his old team. So there might be a little bit of a revenge factor there for him. Might want to stick it to Miami. I feel like the biggest play in this game is probably going to be the Bills' defense. You're going to have to spend up to get to them at 4,300, but they could really, really, really score some points in this game. You got Ryan Fitzpatrick back there playing quarterback. They're going to put pressure on him. If they get a lead and he has to throw, it could be a very long day for Fitzpatrick and a very big day for the Bills' defense. And a lot of people believe that's how it's going to go. Um, the common thing to do through the first 6 weeks of the NFL is to play the defense that's playing against Miami. It's no different this week. They're the top defense on the board. Um, Miami fantasy relevant players, maybe Preston Williams, garbage time. I just don't feel like they're going to keep this game close. And feel like the Bills will be able to do whatever they want. And the last two games that Josh Allen has played against Miami, he's averaged 37 fantasy points in both those games. So he's had some pretty big games against them too. Next is the Chargers at Tennessee. Tennessee's a 2-point favorite. Game total is 40. Derrick Henry is in play at running back. I feel like both defenses could be in play. Tennessee is using Tannehill at quarterback. Mariota's going to the bench. Hunter Henry could be in play for the Chargers. Nice check down. Tennessee's pretty stingy on defense, and they're playing at home. But I'm not sure if I'm going to have too many players from this game. I just don't like the game flow. I don't think there's going to be a lot of points in this game. It's going to be a defensive battle, and you could possibly get some value from those defenses. Last is New Orleans at Chicago. Chicago's a 3-point favorite. Game totals lowest on the board at 38. Alvin Kamara's out. I don't know, as I mentioned, is this going to be the week that Michael Thomas gets 20 targets from Bridgewater? I just don't know where else they're going to go. This sets up as a really tough game for New Orleans in Chicago on the grass. I I just don't see a lot of fantasy points other than Bridgewater to um, Michael Thomas now. And if the Bears decide that they're just going to double team Thomas, perhaps you could see Ted Ginn getting a few things done. But I don't think they're going to be able to get much done on the ground with Latavius Murray. So you could I also feel like New Orleans will probably shut down the Chicago run game. New Orleans is pretty stingy against the run, which would put the receivers for Chicago, Robinson, Anthony Miller, Gabriel. I'm not sure if he was questionable the other day. Gabriel, a lot of questionable tags. Oh, he doesn't have an injury designation. and him and Miller are the same exact price. He doesn't have an injury designation for Sunday's game against the Saints. Gabriel came back from Week 6 bye as a full participant through the week. So Trubisky will have all his targets. Miller, Gabriel, and Robinson. Could see Lattimore matched up on Robinson. So these other two guys might be sneaky picks. And as I mentioned, I'm not big on Latavius Murray at all. So there you have it. I hope this research provides you some value. I look forward to the comments on Monday when I hear about some winning lineups. I will be doing a Sunday night showdown video Sunday afternoon, hopefully in the 3 or 4 o'clock area, so you have it a couple hours in advance. And then Monday, I'll be doing Monday Night Football Showdown and recapping Sunday. So please feel free to drop any comments or opinions below. I've been getting some comments trying to answer them. I appreciate encouraging words, and I also appreciate opinions. And as I mentioned, I try to get back to them as much as possible, and I'll answer them up until game time tomorrow. Please hit the subscribe button, the notification bell, so you get notified when my next video posts. My name is Ty Patton. This is all about winning daily fantasy sports. Good luck, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.